The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Top Ideas for Reducing and Managing IT Expenses. We'll be getting started shortly, but first, I wanted to take a minute to go over the format of today's webinar. All phones have been placed on mute for this webinar. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the Questions tab in the menu. We will address questions at the end of the webinar as time permits. We will also be recording this session, and the recording will be sent out after the webinar. Again, thank you for joining us. At this point, I would like to introduce today's presenter, Noah Ullman. Over 25 years in business, Noah has been involved in the consumer introduction of tablet PCs, smartwatches, and Internet of Things devices long before that was a term. Noah has worked in various general management, sales, marketing, and business development roles in family business, entrepreneurial startups, and over an 11-year career at Microsoft, which included a 2.5-year overseas assignment in Central and Eastern Europe. In the 1990s, he and his brother invented a virtual reality-style glove controller for the video game market. Noah has been awarded several U.S. and international patents and has successfully founded and managed several businesses during his career. In his role at Bloom Shapiro, he enjoys helping organizations of all sizes envision and realize their future with the application of modern technologies, from basic cloud computing to artificial intelligence. I would now like to hand it over to Noah Ullman to begin today's webinar.
Great. Thanks, Jared. I appreciate that introduction. Just way of background, that introduction is typically used when I talk about digital transformation and not necessarily managing IT expense. But the reality is those two things are related. The world is changing rather quickly, and that state of change allows us all to think about technology and our technology needs in different ways, whether you're stepping into advanced technologies like artificial intelligence or predictive analytics or automated workflows, or you simply want to get more with less with the systems you have today and empowering your staff and organization with the latest technologies. A brief outline of the agenda today. I'm going to talk about that state of change very briefly. I'm going to talk about the value proposition of cloud computing. It really does change the way that you think about IT expenses. We're going to explore a little bit on how to look at TCO, or total cost of ownership, ways to measure IT through a broader return on investment. The short story there is it's about what the technology does for you, not about what the technology does, period. We're talking about the importance of having IT complement business strategy for competitive advantage and some of the tools that you can employ right away that can deliver an almost immediate return on investment. So if any of you have heard me speak recently or have kind of kept your ear to the ground on trends in technology, we are entering what many are now calling the fourth industrial revolution, and the output of that fourth industrial revolution is the terms being tossed around are digital transformation, industry 4.0, industrial internet. The basic premise is this: the technologies that are available to us today include computing horsepower that's never before been seen on this planet, that enables things like artificial intelligence, massive data sets to glean insights from. We've got robots, and people are concerned about robots in the workforce and the way that jobs are changing. Drones, I think people think of drones today as a toy for the kids, but the reality is that drones are being used in all industries right now, including the military, but also for things like surveying insurance claims, or farmers are using drones to get better views of their fields. Drones give humans an augmented view of their environment that has been previously unavailable without the major expense of, let's say, a helicopter. Automating workflows, we'll talk about in a minute, but workflows and automating workflows, I believe, are one of the great value propositions in digital transformation. IoT, Internet of Things, are simply devices that are connected to the internet with interconnected things. So if you've got a Fitbit or you've got an Alexa or Google Home, those are all consumer versions of Internet of Things. We've all seen or heard about companies making internet-enabled refrigerators. I'm not sure that's ever going to be a thing, but I do believe that in manufacturing and in durable consumer goods like dishwashers and washing machines, we will see IoT devices in the washing machine that will identify when something is going wrong before it fails, and in fact, be able to schedule a service call before the system goes down. And then there's obviously the mixed reality and augmented reality concepts that have been floating around currently mostly in games, but we're seeing tremendous applications in AR, VR, and MR for treatment of certain psychological issues like PTSD. We're seeing it as a great training device for people in manufacturing spaces or medical spaces. So the sum of all this is that change is the new normal, and we should expect to see change on a very regular basis. In fact, there's a great quote floating around that says, today is the slowest rate of change you are likely to experience in your lifetime. Tomorrow's gonna be faster and more change. The day after that's gonna be even faster with more change. So get used to change. As a background here on the fourth industrial revolution, just to kind of set this concept up, and maybe you're asking the question, why is it the fourth industrial revolution? Wouldn't it be the second? If the first industrial revolution is the invention of the steam engine, the second industrial revolution is the application of that steam engine up to and including electricity and railroads and the impact that had on human society on this planet. The third industrial revolution would then be the invention of the microchip, and the fourth industrial revolution would be the application of that microchip, leading to digitization and much of the technology that I just discussed on that previous slide. The important takeaway for this slide and the way that it's set up is that the first two industrial revolutions are really about the transformation of physical work, right? You've got machines, internal combustion engines, electric motors, taking the place of human physical labor and or domesticated animals. The second two industrial revolutions are really about the transformation of intellectual work. In this case, you've got machines taking the place of the work that humans do with their brains, with their minds. There are things like, artificial intelligence is a great example. Automating a workflow is another great example. Something like using Alexa or Siri or Google Home as, some functions for some administrative responsibilities, setting a calendar, adding a reminder. I'm always kind of amazed, this is maybe, early third industrial revolution, but, as a fan of Mad Men, it was always interesting to see that they had these pools of people that were there to type out dictated messages from the management team. And now, of course, those typing pools don't exist. Everyone's expected to be able to type on their own computer and have a word processor in place. It becomes very commonplace. You don't see many typewriter shops around anymore. So to emphasize this point, let's take a look at New York about 100 years ago. So this is two shots from 1905 and 1920. What you'll notice here is that in 1905, we still have the leading personal transportation technology of mankind, right? The horse has been partnered with man for tens of thousands of years, and that's how man was able to go faster than human could go on their own 2 feet. Within 15 years, which is just one half of a generation, that technology was completely displaced, and we've got the internal combustion engine and the automobile on the streets of New York. If we take a step to a more recent time, just 5 to 12 years ago, and look at an 8-year gap, so 10 years ago, less than 10 years ago, the period of change has already been cut in half. When you look at the announcement of Pope Benedict in 2005, people are in the audience with digital cameras and camcorders, maybe some film. But in 2013, almost everybody has an iPhone or an iPad or some other device in their pocket, which, as I'm sure you've all are aware, in each of those devices, any one of those devices contains like 10,000 times the computing horsepower it took to land a man on the moon. So now, in just 8 years, people are walking around with supercomputers, basically in their pockets, that not only can take the place of a camera or a camcorder, but can live stream that event or save it and share it with people later, and also communicate and compute and do everything that you can do on your device. It's really a remarkable time in which we live, and we should only expect that change to get faster. Speaking of that pace of change, this is a really interesting slide for me, and I hope you all can see it. There are a couple things I want to point out here. This pace of change is reduced the cost of these technologies dramatically. I think solar is a great example. In 1984, solar power was $30 a kilowatt, and today it's 16 cents, or even in 2014, it's 16 cents. To have a 3D sensor in 2009, it was $30,000, and just 5 years later, it's $80. I mentioned drones earlier. Back in 2007, that was a six-figure purchase, and today they're priced as toys. Truly, truly remarkable. What this has enabled is a really interesting change in the way that we think about companies and the value of companies. So this slide is showing that a typical Fortune 500 company, arguably the most successful companies on the planet, it takes a typical Fortune 500 company about 20 years to reach a valuation of $1 billion. It is taking today's average unicorns, 20 years to reach a valuation of $1 billion. It takes the average unicorn here just 4 years to reach a $1 billion valuation. And you can see some companies here that you may recognize that have done it a little bit faster and a little bit slower. This is never before been seen on the planet. Like, it has been assumed that you need to take time to get to these valuations and to the size and scale. But what digitization allows you to do is scale at a rate that's digital. You can scale at a rate that's not analog. There are things that there are foundations that you don't have to have in place to reach incredible heights in the digital age that were a requirement just a few years ago. So this leads us perfectly into the evolving role of IT and what we're talking about in this rate of change. So in the early days, when IT systems were up, success was saying it works, right? The systems are reliable, the users are getting what they needed, they're able to do what they were doing before, maybe a little bit faster and a little bit better. When you're at that stage, it's really IT is completely focused internally, and it becomes an operational efficiency. When you move up this scale and you get a little more cost effectiveness, and that's great. So things are, you're able to see some return on your investment with your IT. And then you move up to business enablement, where you're really finding some efficiencies and productivity. And your IT is moving from an internal line of business focus to a general business focus, and it's becoming more of a tactical advantage than just an operational function. That's good. But where everybody needs to be today, and I don't mean to overstate this or be hyperbolic, but it is really critical as we look to the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years or more, that IT strategy and business strategy are completely interlinked, no matter what business you're in, and that you need to really think about your technology as a competitive differentiation to your market and to your industry. And when you're at that level, your IT becomes a strategic advantage, and you are not just having a positive effect on your business, but you are shaping your market and your industry in new and different ways. You're looking to the fringes of your current market, able to aggressively attack new opportunities. You're able to shift your customers or be a step ahead of your customers in needs and wants. You're able to manage supply chains for greater efficiency and optimization. You change the way that you think about business. And the urgency for this is simply that there's not an industry on the planet that is not being affected by digital transformation and the tools of the fourth industrial revolution. So if your business is not taking advantage of these things today, you can be assured that your competitors are, and your ability to survive in your market using outdated tools is limited. You really do need to use the tools that others are using. The analogy of bringing a knife to a gunfight does apply. So that sounds expensive, right? We're talking about advanced technologies, we're talking about cloud computing, we're talking about artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, and workflows, and big data. So how do you stay ahead of all that without spending a fortune? You use other people's infrastructure. You use the cloud. You connect things from different places in different parts of the world to get a competitive advantage without having to invest. The key here is that digital transformation has created a level playing field. Over previous years and decades, in order to have access to all this supercomputing horsepower, you needed to have a very large organization that could afford the infrastructure to bring in large servers, lots of computing power, massive databases, a team of IT professionals. You simply don't need that anymore. You can rent and use this computing super horsepower by the day, by the cycle, and you don't have to invest in any hardware. So basically, your expenses become operationalized rather than a capital expenditure. And what this slide is addressing here is that the idea behind the cloud is to connect all these devices, machines, amazing software, huge data sets, and people for right time, right place decision making and use. So when you use other people's infrastructure, and when I say other people's infrastructure, I don't mean the business down the street. I mean partnering with a large organization like Microsoft or Amazon or Google or even IBM, where you can use their resources on an on-needed basis. So you only pay for what you use, and it scales up and down with the organization. What's important here too is that your needs, your IT needs, shift from having infrastructure specialists to having specialists that can really focus on driving direct business value. And it's important here to really understand what that business value is. So I'm a big fan of this idea of, know your why, or raising the etzra, or this other way of really thinking about and taking a very hard look in the mirror as an organization about what is the business that you're in. What are you doing that is bringing real value to your marketplace and real value to your customers? What are you known for and why? And focus all of your energy on that. Focus on being the best at what you do, rather than trying to build up support systems within your organization that you have to resource to enable your business of why. So it's important to understand and focus on the things that you do, why you're in business, and not the things that you have to do because you're in business. I mentioned it earlier too, one of the interesting shifts here is that you can move your IT expense from an unpredictable capital expense, oh no, server crashed, or one of my software vendors came in and they did a reconciliation, I have to pay huge licensing fees, to a very predictable and manageable operational expense. So I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I wanted to highlight the 4 keys to digital transformation as we start thinking about the different value proposition of IT in the modern workplace. These are the 4 pillars that we think everyone should be thinking about. And I'll show you this is a Microsoft slide. They break digital transformation down into 4 pillars: engaging customers, empowering employees, optimizing operations, and transforming products. What's really interesting about this, I think, from Microsoft's perspective, is that this is not talking about products, right? This is talking about how technology can help organizations of all sizes do more and achieve more. It's about empowering people through the technology, not the technology itself. The reason why everyone is talking about this opportunity of digital transformation, now starting to get into some of the numbers and the ROI on digital transformation. Digital transformation allows for both top line and bottom line improvement. Unlike most other initiatives, like let's say lean manufacturing, where it really focuses on bottom line improvement and making an organization more efficient and effective, digital transformation can address both top line and bottom line at the same time, which really gives you a very clear ROI. PricewaterhouseCoopers did a survey late last, so a year and a half ago now, I guess, surveying over 2,000 companies, and the ROI expectations are clear. More than half the companies expect ROI in 2 years or less, and almost all of them, over 90%, expect ROI in 5. So why, right? Why do all that? Why make these investments? Because again, although I'm here talking about technology, and I believe in technology, and I'm certainly a technologist, it is really all about people. And I love this quote from Theodore Levitt, who, if you're not familiar, is a Harvard business school professor. It says, organizations exist to enable ordinary people to do extraordinary things. And this has never been more true. The ability for organizations to empower people with tools to do truly remarkable things is greater now than it's ever been before. This is complemented, or perhaps even contradicted a little bit, by this quote from Robert Townsend, who was with Amex for a long time, and then the CEO of Avis. And he said all organizations are at least 50% waste, a waste of people, a waste of effort, a waste of space, and a waste of time. This is one of the keys that I think we should all be thinking about as we move into a digital state with digital transformation, that we want to reduce that waste. We really want to make people more effective. We want to have people doing things that people are really good at and where people are adding value to the organization, not shuffling papers around or doing mundane tasks or, or busy work. Because I've yet to meet an organization where they don't say people are our most important asset, but it's interesting that we don't treat people that way. We don't value people that way. We put people in place in roles and we give them task work to do and don't take in consideration that some of that task work could easily be automated, and then those people not necessarily need to be replaced. Those people can then add value at a human level. They can bring creativity to the job. They can bring more humanistic relationships to their role. We are going to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence is certainly here, but artificial consciousness is a long way off. And consciousness is really what people bring to an organization, and I think that it's undervalued today. And when people bring that creativity and that consciousness and that human awareness to their jobs, the companies that encourage and develop and foster those traits within their workforce are going to be wildly successful, whereas other ones are just going to be, cranking the machine. So that was a very long-winded way of saying that you need to rethink value. You need to rethink about what you pay versus what you get, and you need to rethink this idea that, okay, I'm going to buy a piece of technology and the technology is going to do X, but what is that technology going to enable my people to do or stop doing that can add a different level of value back into the organization? This is back to that earlier concept of IT strategy and business strategy needing to be aligned. So if you look at the total cost of ownership of a piece of technology, you need to look at the software, the hardware, the maintenance, and the support, even things like care and feeding with electricity and cooling. And when you look at people, you have to look at their entire stack of costs and expenses, not just the salary, but the salary and the benefits and the training that you give them and sick days that they take, and the influence that these people have on culture, on your corporate culture, and how to shift that corporate culture to make your organization more effective. So here's an example. If you have a 30-person organization and you have a handful of people in that organization that are dragging you down, and I'm sure you all work in offices and you know who those people are. Imagine if those people were freed up and you don't get the complaints at the coffee break room or at the water cooler, where those people are now shifted into this positive space where they're able to add value back in the organization. They're not complaining about how archaic the tools are, how mundane their job is. Everyone walks into an office and you're engaged and you're excited and you're alert and you're thinking about your customers. That is an ROI that's difficult to measure, but it has a tremendous impact on the things that an organization can do and how you can really move into an enlightened state of operations. There has never been a more critical time to really think about the humanity within your organization and how you enable it with technology. People expect, and for good reason, because they have this ability on their consumer devices, they expect to be able to get access to information or order an Uber or a pizza or whatever they want to do or a video with 2 or 3 clicks on their phone. So when you are working in an organization where it takes a week-long process to get something ordered, or the systems are unbearably slow, or you have 3 different logons for different systems and different portals, and the technology becomes a barrier, people don't function at optimal levels. They get frustrated, they get concerned, they have some anxiety, they feel unsettled, and they ask, they don't understand, for good reason, they don't understand why this is not as easy as the apps on their phone. It should be as easy as the apps on their phone. In fact, every organization that makes these investments to have access to information and automating workflows and giving people the ability to get their jobs done with less friction will see that return in spades. So very specifically, this technology gives people back the most valuable resource on the planet because nobody's figured out a way to make any more of it. Time. Everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. If you have your payroll working on spending, their 8 hours a day and a chunk of that time doing mundane tasks, looking for information they need to make better decisions, not finding documentation, frustration and difficulty collaborating with their colleagues. When you can fix that through some very simple and affordable technology tools, you give back the gift of time. When you're able to complement that with access to data to make right time, right place decisions, you give people the confidence to augment their stories with data points. You give the ability for mid-level or even frontline workers to go back to their management with data points to make a case where they don't have to go to their boss and say, hey, it's my opinion, or I think. They can go to their boss and say, hey, the data shows that if we make this change, we're going to get a better result in this area. It's a much easier conversation for a person to have with their management when they're supported by data. In fact, there's a famous quote that says, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. So these two things, these two ideas, giving your employees back time and giving your employees data to make better decisions, are really the core return on the investments in technologies today. We're not talking about doing the same things faster. Digital transformation is not about a faster caterpillar. Digital transformation is about changing that caterpillar into a butterfly. So how do you do that? Like, if there's some finance people on the phone, and I presume that there are, you want to measure baseline activity. You want to understand routine tasks. You want to understand how your workforce is spending their day today, because time really is that most precious asset, and your people are your most important asset. Understand how they're spending their day. And there are actually some technology tools to do that, where you can kind of track calendar activity, or you clock in and clock out, just to get a baseline to understand what time is on task today. Then you look at those tasks and you identify the ones that can be automated or eliminated from a human's day. You bring in some value proposition for optimizing on decision-making with data, and then you really understand the added value proposition to your workforce. This is that technology enablement that I mentioned earlier about empowering employees and optimizing operations that give you a different view of how an organization can function in an environment where humans and technology are working together as colleagues. There's a term for these robots called cobots, rather than just thinking of the technology as a straight up tool that's maybe competitive with the person. One of these tools that we use extensively, and we work with clients all over the region to configure and deploy, is Office 365. Now, Office 365, many people think of it as Microsoft's cloud version of the Office suite, and it is that, but it really is so much more. Office 365 enables organizations to collaborate and team in ways that have been previously impossible, because the software was really working in silos on individual machines or within a network that was closed off. With Office 365, as an example, if you are editing a document and you want somebody else to review or edit that document, historically you've had to send that document or a version of that document for people for review. They would open it up on their own machines. They would make whatever changes or add comments in that document. They would save it as document name version me, right, whatever, and then they would send it back to you. And if it was a large project, you may have sent that document out to 5 or 6 or 10 people, and then you get 5 or 6 or 10 versions of that document back that you then have to reconcile. In a cloud-enabled world, and using Microsoft 365, you don't have to send that document to anybody. You send a link to that document to everybody, and then everybody can work in the same document at the same time, making revisions, adding comments. With a click of a button, you can connect with people over Skype for Business and have a video conference or a text chat. There's no versioning of that document. It is stored, right? The system knows who worked on the document last and when, and you can always revert if you need to revert, but the document name stays the same. the document stays in one place, and those 5 or 6 or 10 people can all add their contribution and collaborate with you on that document in real time. Just the amount of time that saves of not sending the document back and forth and waiting for revisions and somebody else is really an incredible ROI. In addition to that, working in a typical Office, Word, Excel, or PowerPoint document, 365 offers additional tools that can really empower an organization. One of my favorites is Planner. Planner allows you to set up a very simple, lightweight project management site where you can assign tasks and due dates to people, and it can all be managed in one space. And Office 365 also offers Teams, which is a collaborative workspace, much like Slack, if you're familiar with Slack, that if you have a business that's organized around projects, and in fact, here at Bloom Shapiro, we're obviously organized around clients. So for every client that we have in the consulting division, we have a team site for that client. And in that team site, we have all the documentation in a files repository. We have a shared calendar. We have a shared email for that client. We have a planner site so we can manage the project to maximum benefit for everybody. We have a OneNote site where we can take notes. There's a wiki opportunity. So everything that you need is now centered around that client, and you don't have to search through email or search through a file folder to find the information that you're looking for. It's all right where it should be. This is what I wanted to get a picture here of the value proposition of Office 365. These are the apps that come with one flat rate monthly subscription. It really is amazing. You don't have to go out and buy additional versions of these tools. They simply come with Office 365. And Microsoft is adding things to 365 all the time. So this is the shift, right, of buying, Office for all your employees every 3 or 5 years for, $250 or $500 or whatever it costs you, and then having to add stuff as you go versus paying a flat monthly fee that's highly predictable and getting a really rich feature set of apps to work within your organization to empower everyone in your organization to do more. So let's talk numbers, right? So we kind of touched on this a little bit, but if you look at Microsoft 365 and you add Bloom Power into the mix, and Bloom Power is a service offering that we provide that includes some IT support and provisioning of that environment. If you bring all that together, you're looking at no servers within your organization unless you've got some line of business tool that you need. You don't have to do any additional licensing, and the end user support is covered for roughly $80 per person per month. That's significantly less with a nonprofit, and it may be a little bit more depending upon the level of service offering that you need. But that means for a 15-person office, you're looking at about $15,000 a year all in for a fully empowered, modern, digital workplace. And that's a remarkable thing on its own. It's even more remarkable when you partner with an organization like ours to configure the environment properly, to support that environment properly, just so you don't have to do it on your own. And most importantly, to train you and your staff on how to use these tools. One of these other tools that I've alluded to, but I want you to see it, is what a workflow automation looks like. There are a lot of benefits to workflow automation. The one is that it stops people from shuffling paper around. The other is that it routes things properly to the right people at the right time. And the third benefit of workflow automation is that it ensures at the end of the workflow, the document is stored in the right place. This is an example of a tool that we use called Nintex. This is kind of starting out a business. And you can see here that when you start the event with a new file, you've got an email that goes for notification, and then it branches out from there for all the different approvals that need to happen and all the other things that need to happen. There are several really good examples of workflow automation and things that could be automated and should be automated. Interestingly, many of them are HR functions. There are also sales and finance functions that we can automate. Month-end close, we can automate new employee onboarding, we can automate, and I highly recommend automating employee termination for security reasons and making sure that you get back all the assets that have been assigned to them. You can automate bringing a new client on board. You can automate expenses, travel requests, all these things that whatever your organization is doing right now that everyone in the organization knows takes way too much time and is far too complex for the value they get out of that, that is something that I would seriously consider as an automation option. The next tool, so automation is one of the ways we talk about giving back time, right? It's a very simple way to give time back to the organization. Another tool that we talked about with the value proposition is data. And data really is the fuel. People are calling it the oil of digital transformation. But when you're able to give clear insights and surface KPIs or key performance indicators for right place, right role decision making, all the research shows that data-driven decisions deliver somewhere between a 4 and 6% better outcome than non-data-driven decisions. And if you think about that at an organizational level, that's simply adding 4 to 6% to your bottom line because people are making better decisions within your organization. It's found money, and it enables future growth and productivity within the organization. So touching on that a little bit further, if you look at the example down here, if you use data to improve revenue in a $10 million organization, you're going to get $500,000, right, to the top line in year one. I said, let's use that 5%. And then if you're using that same data to reduce the cost in an organization at a 20% gross margin, you're going to put $100,000 to the bottom line in year one. Now, what's amazing about this is this compounds, right? It's money that just builds within the organization. In 5 years, that same organization, that $10 million organization, is going to recognize an additional $8 million in revenue, $1.6 million in gross margin, and then $600K in free money, just straight down in the bottom line. So what we are seeing, and this is why that ROI of digital transformation was so effective, where 55% of companies are expecting to see it in 2 years, and 92% were expecting to see it in 5 years or less, is because when you're able to optimize both top line and bottom line through digital tools, the ROI of this investment becomes clear. Not only does it help ensure that you will actually be in business and be competitive in your marketplace as everyone else is moving into the space, it gives you the ability to actually fund the transformation through the cost savings and sound financial management. So there's a lot I covered here in this presentation, and I hope to have some questions and answers later. And of course, we can have a follow-up conversation anytime. Digital transformation is a huge topic, and it's a little bit scary. It does not need, and in fact, should not happen all at once. One of my colleagues here talks about the difference between, building a bridge and a bungee jump. You build a bridge and you kind of go slowly and you cross the chasm together. Bungee jump, you bounce back, right? So you want to have this ability to have a measured pace of change, have lots of small projects, monitor them, improve them, communicate the improvement, work on a culture change along with the technology change within an organization, because you need people to be comfortable with the way the work that they've done, previously is going to be different than the work they're going to do in the future through these digital tools. And communicating that and really focusing on culture is critically important. Obviously, nothing begets results like success. So focusing on a few pilot projects, managing those projects, measuring those projects, communicating back within your organization of the success of those projects, and then moving to a next project is the way to go. So you should think of this as a transformational experience, not flipping a big breaker switch. So what you get, though, along this process is you get more time, better decisions, predictable expenses, less frustrated employees that are adding positive energy back into the culture. That are empowered, they're engaged with customers. Your operations are optimized, right, through automated workflows and the proper decision making at the right levels. And ultimately, you've transformed your product, services, and your entire organization through the proper implementation and use of technology. That is it for me. I actually went through this a little bit faster than I thought I would, Jared. So we're about 40 minutes in, and I am very happy to take some Q&A.
Yeah, a couple quick questions that have come in so far. You gave multiple examples of technology leading to an ROI, whether it be Office 365 or workflows. Is there an initial first step you would recommend an organization should take to get started? Is one piece of technology easier to implement than others, kind of as a starting point on the digital transformation journey?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I actually hear that a lot. Like, where do I begin? I would argue that the place to start is to take a really good look in the mirror. These organizations, any organization, should have an honest discussion about where they are today, where they want to be in the future, understanding where processes can be improved or eliminated or outsourced, right? Where do you find your efficiencies, and understanding that your why, right? Understanding your purpose as an organization and how you serve customers, partners, and your community. That said, I do believe that the two things to focus on for a clearer ROI are time and data. So I think that making a move to the cloud sooner rather than later is really smart. And I do think that if you're not on Office 365 today, especially if you're a nonprofit, because Microsoft offers nonprofit pricing that's almost free, I would definitely make that move to 365 and get people working in a cloud environment. And then I would look at either next step would be data analytics if you have an organization that has a complex decision-making process, or look at automating workflows to give people back time and simplify some aspects for organization.
And I think you just alluded to this a bit in your response to this question, but this one comes from someone at a smaller nonprofit who has a tighter budget and asks, are the examples you provided today applicable to an organization of my size?
Yeah, so I want to be as clear as I possibly can be. This is applicable to everybody and every organization of every size. And one of the keys here, and I did mention it earlier in the presentation, is that with cloud computing, you're working with a different business model that is per user based, not per organization, or you don't have to invest in major infrastructure or hardware. So a two-person organization can have access to the same computing horsepower that a Fortune 500 organization can have access to, and you would pay for that by user. So there's certainly no question. This is that democratization of technology and that level playing field that if there's anything that you walk away from this conversation today, I want it to be this, is that the world is flat. The playing field is level, and it's going to change the way that small organizations can operate in this world. It's also going to change the way that large organizations can operate in this world. So let me give you an example. I shared the slide with some of those startups that are, in just a few short years have reached $1 billion valuation because they're able to compete with the big boys in their industry. In fact, you look at a company like Airbnb, they've changed the rules of hospitality, right? They didn't have to go out and build hotels to compete with Hilton and Marriott. They figured out a better way of using unused space in people's homes and monetizing that. So you've got small companies competing with very large companies. The flip is happening too because of digitization and the change in the ability to scale both up and down. Large organizations are going to be reaching down into markets that previously weren't quote unquote worth it to them, right? But now they have the ability to scale down and engage with customers and in segments that have previously been too small. So the competitive landscape is completely shifting. Again, this analogy is a little bit crude, but don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Make sure that you and your organization are using the tools that can keep you competitive in your space, and that there's a really clear understanding of what you are, what you do, why you do it, and who you do that for, and in what service do you provide your product or offering. So for a nonprofit, absolutely. Small nonprofits can get versions of Microsoft Office 365 for free, and if you want to have the more advanced versions, they are severely discounted for nonprofit organizations. And I think that every nonprofit should be on 365 today because, frankly, having IT expertise is not likely a core competency of a nonprofit. So that's something I would absolutely argue that should be outsourced as well.
Great. I think those are the questions we had. So
that's great. Well, thank you all for your time. I am available for the recipients of this webcast for a complimentary assessment of your IT expense. I can take a really good look. Even if you just were to send me your IT expense divided by the number of people in your organization, that would facilitate a conversation where I think that we can come out of the gate and with a way to save your organization a ton of money, arguably, and move you into this digital world. So I look forward to that. I hope you all take advantage of that opportunity. My contact information is on the screen here, and I thank you for your time. Have a great day.